Okay, up until this point, to this chapter, what we've talked about is the Core 5 overview. We've given you some live examples of how the Core 5 pieces kind of interface. We've shown you an example of what a non-Core 5 player looks like. That'll be helpful. All this will be helpful as we come into now the heart and soul of the whole mechanical background of why we do mechanics and what we're trying to achieve. Now, in the chapter 1, we talked about the fact that phase 1 and 2 was designed to help us get to phase 3, and of course 4 and 5 were really helping us get through phase 3. So phase 3 is a central piece to everything we're doing, and we know through thousands and thousands of swing clips and hundreds of hours of research that if we can get a player to the points that you see on the screen now, we recognize that the residual effect of getting them to this position, phase 3, into the contact zone and through it to a complete finish, we know we can impart an incredibly accelerated increased percentages of solid contact with authoritative power. Okay, so we're going to get out of this habit of having our players dribble the ball in the infield, pop balls up, pull balls foul, and get into the keeping the ball in between the lines and hitting line drives. And we almost can guarantee that if you can get your player to this point, you have changed their career. We've seen it thousands of times now. So let's talk about real quickly the elements and the components within phase 3. And I'm going to run through these for you. And it's important to have an idea of what each one of these do. And number 1, obviously, as you can see, that's just identifying the contact zone on this particular clip, where the hands have been frozen at the point we've made contact with that line. We're right about on the line there, and at that point we're going to take note of where some of these key positions are. So we've hit the contact zone, we've frozen the clip, and here the first thing I'm going to do, as I mentioned in the previous clip, is I'm going to begin from the bottom side of the swing mechanics, because that's where everything starts. Remember, I mentioned that the bottom side leads, the top side follows. And of course, I'm always looking for proper balance and direction through all the movements. And one of the things that you want to understand now about phase number 2, about keeping a closed side foot, is that closed side foot is tied to the ankle, to the knee, to the hip, all the way up to the front shoulder. That entire front side of that particular clip, as I will point out here, is all really tied to that number 2. And that is, we're going to keep number 2 closed, because we recognize the third principle is that the front side steers, back side generates. And so the front side is going to contain the direction, and then the back side is going to really tie in the force and generate the pop that we're looking for in our swing. So in order to control the direction, we've got to keep the closed front side foot here at contact with phase 3's line here. Okay, now from contact on, that foot can begin to open up. The biggest problem we're going to incur over the time that we're working with hitters is that so many times, and we're going to show you in some of the examples in the coming chapters, is that people open up that front side foot before their hands ever get to that line. And so it's important to keep the front side foot closed. It's important in number 3 that you've got good backside rotation, which allows the hips to rotate and the whole backside to turn on an axis, so that you can generate and throw the hips behind the hands. And what is a good indicator of proper backside pivot here is the fact that the shoestrings are pointed forward towards the pitcher. Now, not always is that going to be the case. About 85% of the time it will be. About the next 15 to 20%, give or take, is you're not going to be required, because not all the balls are over the plate on the inside half of the plate that would allow you to rotate like that. Many times the ball is away, and so you're not going to have the same requirement for that pivot or that pivoting action. So you may have the toe maybe in this direction a little bit more, because he's actually staying inside the ball going to the opposite field, okay? And so that's an important point to note. Now, in number 4, you're going to be looking at more of what's happening with the top hand. And in phase 1, say you're right here, the knuckles right along here are in a 90 degree. What you see here is a 45 degree angle of those knuckles. But in the phase 1, you'd see a 90 degree angle slightly, to phase 2, 90 degree angle, and then into phase 3, as you enter phase 3, those knuckles are going to be angled at about a 45 degree. That's going to be important to some things that we're going to mention as it relates to the top flaws that we experience that we're going to share with you in later chapters. All right. Now in element component number 5 here of phase 3, we just want to keep the bat head up, and we want to remember that at this point of contact that we suggested in the previous chapter where we lost the bat head angle, here we've got good bat head angle where the bat head is actually over the hands. We want to be able to have the bat head over the hands as it hits the phase 3 line, and this example shows it perfectly. Now in number 6, this is kind of a residual effect of how the hitter's been able to keep his front side closed, and we consider number 6 to be kind of the invisible flaw, because so many times, if you can imagine for a moment, if you would, a bird's eye view, a top view down. Say we're on top of this hitter and we can actually see both the front shoulder and the back shoulder. What happens many times for hitters who are Core 5 instructed is that front side shoulder will actually open up to the back of that heel before the hands get to that line. And that's going to create that whole arc through the swing, kind of what you saw in the Core 5 trained hitter example in the previous chapter. So here we still want to maintain a closed shoulder position that remains in on the plate, much like everything else, still in on the plate. And number 6 shows a good example of that for you. Now in number 7, you can see that the head is down. This ball is actually going to be down in the zone, so he's got the bill of the cap tilted down a little bit. That's okay. It's just we don't want to see the head opening off of the plate. That's another example of poor movement where it's moving away. The body will actually rotate underneath the still head. The head's going to be still as he rotates and goes through all of his explosive movements. Obviously, if the pitch is a little bit up, then of course the bill of the helmet would be up as well. And then number 8, a very important point that you'll see here is that we denote that most of his activity is taking place behind the front side leg here, and really allowing him to utilize the backside where he's the strongest. His nose and his helmet are not out over his toes. Many times you see hitters get out front, they're dragging that foot through the follow-through process or the finish of the swing, and it's just not a very good way to deliver maximum impact. And obviously you're losing the bat head the whole way. So it's important in number 8 to stay back as long as you can. So those are the key components of phase 3. And so let's go ahead and take a look at some live examples of what it should look like in real time and what some of the poor examples are that you may be experiencing out there in the field.